I went into service in the U.S. Army in March of '82. The reason I went into service was I'm from a small town here in Kentucky called Metcalfe County, Edmonton. And you either went to service or you drove 30 miles for a job or you worked on the farm. And I'd had enough raising tobacco in my life, enough of the pig farm, so I decided to join the service. I joined at 17 years old. The service to me was not only a way for me to get out from where I was at, but it was a way for me to expand my horizons. Unfortunately, I wasn't like a lot of the other service members in the school here. I didn't travel a lot. I was stationed at, I did basic at Fort Knox. I went to Fort Lee, Virginia. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. Then I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, home of the airborne. My job was a parachute rigger. In case you don't know what that is, that means I packed parachutes. And in order to pack parachutes, you had to be able to jump. So I had to go to jump school. And a funny story about jump school, the first plane I was ever on was going to jump school. And my dad took me up here to Louisville, and they put me on this plane, and the stewardess asked me, she said, well, would you like a window seat? And I said, well, sure. So I got a window seat, and like I said, I still think I'm hot stuff. 17 years old. The plane takes off. It gets about 30, 40 feet off the ground. I motioned for the stewardess. She said, once the plane levels off, she'll come back here to me. And I kept my hand raised the whole time, okay? I didn't put my hand down. So finally the plane levels off, and the stewardess come back here, and she said, yes, sir, can I help you? I said, yeah, you can take me back. I said, because I ain't jumping out of these things. 4 weeks later, I was jumping out of airplanes. I remember when I come home after I joined the Army, and I talked to my dad, and my mom and dad was divorced, and I lived with my dad, just me and my dad. He said, well, what did you get? Because he didn't know. I said, Dad, I'm going to be airborne, parachute rigger. Dad smoked. He reached down, he picked up a cigarette, lit a cigarette, he scratched his head, he said, tell me again what you're going to do. I said, I'm airborne parachute rigger. He said, son, there ain't but two things that falls out of the sky. And he said, that's bird crap and fools. He said, now what does that make you? I stood there for a second, I shook my head, and I was like, well, thanks a lot for the confidence, Dad. But I know my dad was proud of me. I know he's very proud of me. But I joined the service. Like I said, my grandfather was in the service. He was in the Korean War. My dad was the oldest child, so during Vietnam, he didn't have to go. My brothers did, or his brothers did. So it was very important to me to make something of my life outside of where I was from. So like I said, I went to Fort Bragg. I was there for 12 years. During my last my last 7 years, I wore clothes just like this every day. My job, even though I was a parachute rigger, that was what I got paid to do. My job was to work for the colonel and the sergeant major of the brigade that I was attached to. And I built things. I built conference tables, I renovated the barracks, I renovated the offices, whatever they wanted me to do, I did it. So I had it pretty made the last 7 or 8 years I was there. The main reason I went to the airborne, I got an extra $83 a month. Now you sit back and think about that. $83 a month to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. I guess my favorite experience was when I went to, my two of them. One was when I jumped in Alaska. And back then we had the old disc cameras. And I know you kids don't know what the disc cameras are, but there was a disc about that big around. And it was real easy to load. So we was jumping out of a helicopter. The jump master, he said, I was up there on what they call TDY, temporary duty assignment. The jump master, he asked me, do you have your camera with you? And I was a sergeant then. I said, yeah, I got it. He said, well, get ready. I'm going to take you up a little bit higher. Everybody else jumped out of the aircraft, out of the helicopter. And he said, okay, so we're going to go up, we're going to fly around for a few minutes, then we're going to let y'all jump out. We're going to go up to about 4,000 feet, which was awesome. I mean, the most we ever jumped out was going to be 1,500 feet. So we went up to about 3,500, I think it was, and we jumped. And man, I took pictures. I think I took like 9 or 10 rows of pictures before I hit the ground. I got pictures of the mountain goats on the side of the mountains. I got pictures of my boots. Got a lot of pictures of my boots. But it was just, it was an experience I'll never forget. Then the other jump that I remember more than any of them was in Key West, Florida. We went down with the German Army, and my job was to fix their parachutes for them. So we're standing in the back of the aircraft, and door, or the ramp, I guess you should say. And the aircraft, it banks. When it banks like this, you know, you think you're going to fall out, and I'm literally looking down at the reefs of Key West. It was amazing, amazing view. And they told us, they said, look, they said, we had what they call water wings. We had this thing on under our parachute. They said, when you hit the water, you pop your water wings. They inflate and keep you afloat. They said, whatever you do when you hit the water, if you get hurt, do not move. Just lay there. The boat will pull you in. So sure enough, chute deploys. I hit the water. I mean, my parachute really didn't even hit the water. Somebody grabbed it. They pulled it into a boat. We went to shore. We was down there for the weekend. And about a month later, a friend of mine calls me up and he says, hey, he said, are you in front of the TV? And I said, yeah. He said, well, turn it over to, I don't forgot what the educational channel was in North Carolina. He said, turn it over there. I want to show you something. So I turned it over. They was talking about the Army's most dangerous drop zone, Shark DZ, Key West, Florida. There was more sharks per capita in that one little body of water than there was anywhere else in the United States. That's why they told us not to move when we hit the water. But of course, they didn't tell us that, you know, when we jumped. But it was, the Army has always been was always a rewarding experience for me. I met my wife. My wife was from here, but we raised our kids there. The reason I decided to get out was I didn't want to move my kids around. I wanted them to have a nice, stable home. I didn't want to move from school to school. So that's the reason I got out after 12 years. Veterans Day, it's hard for me to explain to you what Veterans Day is. A couple of years ago, probably the sixth graders, you remember, the eighth graders now, you'll remember this, but I explained to y'all what TAPS meant. To this day, when I hear TAPS, I mean, it almost brings tears to my eyes. It brings a chill over my body that I can never explain. But you think of the men and the women who have served, who have sacrificed. Not only the women or the men and women that served, but the one that supported them, their wives, their husbands, their siblings, to make this country the way it is. Now, we're voting. Matter of fact, by the time you see this, I think we've already voted. That's a right that we wouldn't have if it wasn't for our veterans. I'm not talking about myself. I didn't serve in no campaign. I stayed at Fort Bragg during peacetime. Operation Desert Storm was on, but I didn't go nowhere. But I'm talking about the men and women before me and the men and women after me that have served, that have supported our country. They have given us the freedoms to get out here and get in our cars and drive down to the store, to vote, to express our opinion, to wave our flag, to listen to our music. We're very fortunate, and that's who I'm grateful for. To me, like I said, the main reason I did it was to better myself, but it taught me how to be a better person, how to be self-reliable, and how to be accountable for my own actions. And if I had it to do again, would I do it again? In a heartbeat. But the next time, if I did it again, I think I would probably try to stay another 8 more years so I could retire. I wouldn't have to work as hard as I do now. But I don't regret it. And every day when I hear TAPS or the Star Spangled Banner, it has a different meaning to me, and hopefully it will to you.
Where I came from, in my neighborhood, there wasn't a lot going on, and the military was something that I've always wanted to pursue, and I never thought I was really college material. So I joined the military at the age of 19, and I became an aircraft mechanic. I joined the military in April of 1980, and I served about 16 years until I had an unfortunate accident where I was working on an aircraft, and wheel and tire assembly they brought out to me, it literally blew apart, and I lost my arm that way. And then I became property of the VA, and they sent me to school, and I became a teacher. My father was in the Air Force, and my oldest brother was in the Air Force. I had 2 other brothers that were in the military. One of them was in the Army, and one of them was in the Navy. And yeah, I was, besides my father, I was the only sibling to go into the Air Force. And you know, having said that because of the way my life turned out and the way that I took, there was a fork in the road when the accident happened, and I was actually the first member of my family ever to graduate from college, so I'm very proud of that. I've been all over the world, really, mostly in the European theater. I was stationed in Germany and parts of England. I went to the Netherlands and Belgium and Czechoslovakia even. I've been to North Africa and Panama, and I was deployed during Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I was in Operation Panama, but most of the time that I was deployed into the desert, I was actually flying rotations in and out of Germany. Great experience. Anybody that was looking to join the military, of course, I have a biased opinion. I would steer them toward the Air Force. What Veterans Day means to me is we wouldn't have any of these freedoms and the privileges that we have without people going to combat to preserve our rights in this country. And that's what makes Veterans Day a special thing for me. And I really honor that with full integrity. And I hope that I can teach other people and other students to do the same thing, that know what the flag represents and know what Veterans Day means to a lot of people, a lot of family members, and that they really need to understand what it truly stands for.
My name is David Bretz. I joined the United States Army in 1995. I was in graduate school at University of North Texas. I went to an audition for the United States Army Band, and I actually won a spot in the band, so I went and enlisted. My first duty station was basic training. I was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. From there, I went to Fort Story, Virginia, which is actually right on the beach. And then I went back to my next duty station, which was back at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. So I spent my basic training and my first actual real duty station in the same post. At Fort Leonard Wood, I was transferred to South Korea for just a smidge under a year. And then when I was in South Korea, I got orders to go to drill sergeant school. So when my time in Korea was up, I went back to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I went to drill sergeant school. I was a drill sergeant for probably 22 months, 23 months. And then I came down on orders and I went to Germany. I was stationed in Germany, a town called Mannheim. My unit in Germany, we traveled pretty much everywhere. We went to Germany, we went to France, we went to England, Austria, Spain, Poland, St. Petersburg, Russia, Czech Republic. We went to Egypt. We went to Morocco, Cyprus. We went to Kuwait, and I went to Iraq. Spent 16 months in Iraq. We also went to Bosnia and Kosovo. At the end of my 4.5 years in Germany, I got transferred to Fort Knox. Fort Knox was my very last duty station. Here at Fort Knox, we traveled all over the Midwest. Our area of responsibility at Fort Knox encompassed pretty much every state that borders the Ohio and the Mississippi River. So we went everywhere from Duluth, Minnesota, all the way to New Orleans. Went way as far east as Pittsburgh, and far west as St. Louis. And so we would play a lot of public relation missions, and we did a lot of troop support. That was basically all my time in the Army. I really enjoyed the Army. What I really enjoyed most about the Army is the friendships I made, the camaraderie that people get when they have a shared experience. Just a couple of days ago on Facebook, I messaged an old friend of mine who I actually spent all my time in Iraq with. I just messaged him really quick, and it was just 3 words, and he knew exactly what that meant, and we laughed we're still laughing, because it's just those things when you have that shared experience together. You can't find that with a lot of other things. I think the only other people that share that are married couples, because you go through a lot with those people that you know you can trust, and they'll always be there for you. Would I consider to do it again? Absolutely. There's so many jobs in the military. There's mechanics, there's computer repairmen, there's communications. It's not just infantry, and it's not just tank drivers. There's people who work on the tanks. There's people who work on the guns. There's people who do all the paperwork and file all the awards and make sure your pay is right, make sure you get fed. They transport things everywhere. There's a job for anybody. If you want to do it, there's a job. There's lawyers, there's doctors, there's nurses. And so the military was it was one of those experiences I'll never forget. My dad was in the military. He was a career Air Force. My stepdad was in the military. He was career Air Force. I had an uncle that served in Korea. He was in the Navy. And so, yes, it'll be one of the most memorable times I will ever have in my life.
My name's Jeff Scott. I have served in both the United States Navy and the Army National Guard. I joined the United States Navy first in 1992 and served 4 years on active duty as an aircraft mechanic in the Navy. I was a little older when I went in. Most people go in kind of right out of high school. I spent a couple of years in college before I went and decided that I wanted to maybe do something a little bit different with my life at that point. Found the Navy was a good place to travel the world, get college paid for, serve my country, and make a good paycheck and have good benefits along the way. It was a lot of fun. My first duty station was boot camp, which was called Great Lakes. It's up in northern Chicago. So I actually enjoyed boot camp. I thought it was a lot of fun. Then from there I went to A school, which is kind of like college for the military, where I learned to be an aircraft mechanic. And went to Millington, Tennessee, just south of Memphis for that. Then I went to California for C school, which is like a master's degree for aircraft maintenance in San Jose, California. Then I went on to my first official duty station, which was Barbers Point, Hawaii, where I was there for 3 years. That was a lot of fun. I was in a special projects squadron, so we did kind of more unusual things than other P3 squadrons did. And so while I was there, got to do a lot of cool things: surfing, hang gliding, bungee jumping, just fun stuff. It was a good, fun group of people to be with, and I'm still friends today with many of those people that I served with, even back in the mid-90s. After my 4-year enlistment in the Navy, I took a couple of years, went back, finished my degree at Western Kentucky University, and decided that I missed the military. So I joined the Army National Guard for a 2-year term, which I really enjoyed that. The Army's completely different than the Navy. I prefer the Navy over the Army. It just suits my personality better, but the Army has its value too, and I really enjoyed my time that I spent doing that. So from after that 2 years, I took another little break, and then I decided I missed it again. So I joined the Navy Reserves and spent 2 years in the Navy Reserves. And that was actually the first time I ever spent time on a ship in the Navy, which was pretty fun. Being in the Reserves, they flew me from Louisville, Kentucky to Hawaii. Then I sailed on the USS Emory S. Land from Hawaii to Guam, which was a lot of fun. I actually really loved being on a ship. It was a neat experience, one that many people will never be able to say that they've had, sailing across the Pacific. After I spent 2 years in the Navy Reserves, got out, missed it again, and went back into the Army National Guard again. So I guess total I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 10 years of service. Love every bit of it. I wish there wasn't an age cap, because I'd probably go back in tomorrow and never get out. I enjoy it that much. in addition to that, some of the cool places that I've been to travel because of the military. Um, let's see, I've been to Wake Island, I've been to Samoa, Hawaii, I've been to Japan, Thailand, Malaysia, New Zealand, Australia, Oman, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, um, Kenya. I'm probably missing some place, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head. And that was really one of the big reasons that I decided to go into the military, is because I love to travel. I'd say in my life, not counting just the places that I've been to the military, I've probably been to over 35 different countries and plan on doing more. It's a big world and it's fun to see, and it's especially fun to go see it if you can get paid to go see it, so which was what the military provided. A lot of people ask if I was ever in combat. No, I was not. I was in on the tail end of Desert Storm at 96, but the biggest danger I had of in my enlistment was the risk of getting sunburned on Waikiki Beach while I was surfing. So no, never saw any hard time or anything like that. So, which fortunate, because it's nobody really wants to have to experience that.
Spent 8 years in the Marines, 92 to 2000. Just a little background where I came from. I actually went to school right here at Mount Washington Middle School, 7th and 8th grade. Graduated Bull East 1986. Played a lot of ball, baseball, basketball. After that, I went to college, tried to play a little baseball, Middle Georgia College. Spent a year there playing ball. After that, it really didn't work out for me, so came back home and got a job UPS, and then furthered on to started working at Lear Seating Corporation, making seats for Ford Motor Company. Really wasn't what I wanted to do. I was young. I was 24 years old. I wanted to try to challenge myself, do something special, do something a lot of other people couldn't do, and just challenge myself. So I joined the Marine Corps. Had a lot of family in the Marines. I mean, not actually the Marines, but the military. My grandfather was in World War II. My uncle was in World War II. Had a couple uncles in the Navy, the Army. Had two half-brothers, both were in the military. One was in the Army and one was in the Navy. Just always, I remember seeing my half-brother walk in church one day, and he came in his uniform, and it impressed me to see him like that. So something that was always in the back of my brain that I wanted to, maybe as I got older, I could also do that, go into the military. So I joined in 1992. Went to Parris Island, South Carolina to do my boot camp. Boot camp is usually 90 days. I did 130 there. I was hurt, developed cellulitis in my foot. Spent about 40 more days there than I should have been. So it was it was a sacrifice trying to make it through there. But I did that, graduated, went on to Fort McClellan Army base where I did my MP training. Spent about 6-8 weeks there, 8 to 10 weeks probably, because I had to wait to be picked up. My first duty station was actually Marine Corps Logistics Base, Albany, Georgia. It's southwest Georgia. It's where the Marines keep their logistics. It's their supplies, and they have to have MPs to guard that and to keep up with the Marines there. So I spent about 2.5 years there. When I was there, I started playing softball with the base team, and I was invited to play for the All-Marine softball team. It's the best 15 softball players in all of the Marine Corps. We went and played all in a tournament with the Army, Navy, Air Force, and we actually won the gold medal that year. First year I played, that was really special for me. So like I said, I did 2.5 years at Albany. I got orders to Okinawa, Japan. It's an unaccompanied tour. At the time, Miss Wood, Missy, we had 2 children. One was 3, and my son was about 6 months. when I took off by myself for a year to Okinawa. So another sacrifices we make as a military member. After Okinawa, I was a little bit tired, so I got out. I thought that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a police officer. So I got out and I interviewed and whatnot, but I feel like I want to go back. So 6 months later, I went back in. Had to go down the rank. I was E4 when I got out. To get back in, I had to go down to E3 to get back in. So sacrifice. Went back as MP. Spent about a year, not even that long, 6 months maybe on the road, what you would call. I was a baseline military policeman, which means you're basically just a police officer on the base, taking care of, just normal police stuff. I was selected to be on the accident investigation team while I was there, which I had to go to Lackland Air Force Base to get training. I went to Lackland there in San Antonio, Texas for a month. Graduated from accident investigation school, came back to Camp Lejeune, where they sent me when I first got back in. Spent 4 years there. Had a good time. Great place. At the end of my 4 years there, I was medically discharged. I had developed multiple sclerosis when I was in. Don't know how, but went through a lot there. Last year I was basically going to Bethesda, Maryland, doing tests and trying to find out what was wrong with me. Finally come to it was multiple sclerosis, so they medically discharged me, retired me as a sergeant in the Marines, and so I had to get out again. So now I had to go find something to do, so I can't be a police officer anymore, because I really managed you can't do that. So I went back to college. I thought I might be good with computers, so I took the vocational rehabilitation program the VA offers, and they paid for my school. Went back to school for 2.5 years, got my associate's degree in computer networking.
What does Veterans Day mean to you?
Well, it's just the sacrifices all these men and women have made all through the years, giving their lives for this country, so we can live the way we do.
I was not raised in a military family, but met my husband, who was already enlisted in the military. He had served already 4 years of active duty and was currently in the Kentucky National Guard whenever I met him. He's still in the Kentucky National Guard and is currently a first sergeant of his current unit right now. He has done 3 tours of war since he's been in the military, and I have gone through 2 of those with him. So in 2006, or 2005, I guess, January of 2005 to January of 2006, he was in Operation Iraqi Freedom. So for 1 year, he was gone. And in that whole year, he came home for 2 weeks. So just imagine a year and only getting to see your spouse for 2 weeks. As a spouse of someone that is gone for that length of a time, it's very difficult. You have to kind of pick up the pieces. There's a lot of things that he does that, you have to step up and do. You're basically mom, dad, and the whole 9 yards while they're gone. Things that you're used to them taking care of. The car breaks down, you no longer have them there to fix it. You have to find the means to do that yourself. It made me become very independent, and in a way that was a good thing, but not so good when he came home. So a lot of people see it as when they leave, it's hard on the families, but from the experience that I've had, it was very difficult when he returned home. So, and that's kind of hard to imagine. You always see these happy reunions and everybody excited to see each other, and we were very excited to see each other, but as he came home and tried to reintegrate back into the house that I had taken over, it was very interesting and very hard. His first tour, he was in convoys, so he was always in danger. I never knew when I would hear from him. I tried to avoid social media at all costs. People would, say stuff to me and tell me stuff, but I tried to not think about it. I tried to not worry about it. I just tried to avoid all social media because I didn't want to think about the what ifs. The only thing I wanted to rely on was just the conversations with him and just knowing that he was telling me what was going on. So that year was very rough, stressful, but we got through it. And then again in 2011, 2012, he deployed again. He spent part of that time in Operation New Dawn, which was in Iraq. It was whenever we were pulling out of Iraq. He was part of those units that were the last ones out of Iraq during that time. And I just told myself, I was convinced that after that he would be home early, but he wasn't. He spent the rest of the year in Kuwait with Operation Spartan Shield, where they were there just in case something were to happen again, they would go back into Iraq. So the second go around, he was gone for a year again, got to come home for 2 weeks at a time again, but things were a whole lot smoother. We knew what to expect the second time around. We knew what needed to happen in order for the transition home to be smoother, and he was in a position this time where he wasn't in danger as much. He was in an office making sure things got done, watching stuff, and he had the ability to be able to call me. And I don't think there was a day that went by that year that he did not call home at some point just to touch base with me. And that made it a lot easier because then he felt like he was part of the family when he came home still, and I could run, questions and stuff by him to get his opinion on things and that kind of stuff. And so when he came home the second time, the transition was much easier. But again, I still avoided, media and social media and all that stuff. I even kind of avoided, I guess, talking to other family of the soldiers just because people would get their stories mixed up and they would, tell you things that weren't always true. And it was very difficult because you were pretty much alone. I mean, you just feel like you're just alone. I do have family that's close by, so thankfully I had that because they were very supportive. If I needed something, my dad was there to help, or my brother was there to help, and my mom was able to help out with my son and all of that good stuff. So I was lucky to have that because I know there are several families that don't even have that, and I could not imagine it just being me and not having the support of family while he was gone for that year. So the military itself, they tell you the things that are available for you for help whenever they're gone, but there's no training or nothing they could really do to prepare you for that year of just them being away. They usually phone numbers to reach them in case of an emergency or places to contact in case of a crisis, that kind of stuff, but never really, I guess, prepare you for the loneliness of it and the stress that comes along with being mom and dad and all the above. So, but they are really good and very supportive of their, if the family needs something, they're there. I had also had the opportunity the first go around, which I don't like to say the word opportunity, I guess, but it kind of makes me think about Veterans Day, I guess, in a different perspective, because yes, I'm not going through this. I see the sacrifice that he has made because, he's had to miss 2 years of birthdays, anniversaries, and just all the different things that were going on, watching our son play ball and just all, the things that happened. He would always come home and say, oh, he wasn't doing that when I left. So there were things that he had to miss out on. But his first tour, there was a guy that he was friends with that did lose his life in that battle. And so I felt it as a duty to him, since he couldn't be here, I attended the funeral of that soldier. And so that put a different perspective on, I guess, Veterans Day and the sacrifice that they do make for us, whether they're still serving or if they are gone now. So Veterans Day, I have a huge respect for our veterans and the work that they do and the time that they serve and the families that support them in the background. Not all families can survive a year apart, but a lot do. So I guess I just appreciate all the things that people do to acknowledge our veterans and show their support for our veterans.